All right. I know I say that like every episode is a special episode because we always have a special guest, but this really is a different one. So I'm really excited today. We've got Lauren on the show, which you heard the intro. What you might not know is that Lauren was actually one of my bridesmaids who ended up not even being able to come to the wedding because she was like about to pop with her first baby. And out of all of my friends from like high school, college, back home, you're the only one now who's also an entrepreneur. So we have this like really special, unique friendship, obviously, as well as like this crossover into entrepreneurial land, which is really exciting. So I'm stoked to have you here. I freaking love you.
I know, same here. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And this is not just going to be a love fest. I know you're going to drop so much value and I'm really excited to get into the show, but I also want to just kind of circle back on how everything is intertwined. So not only did we meet through basically like the mutual friends where Mike and I met, which is really cool, but you're now working with Shannon Weinstein, who of course has been on the show. She's the head CPA and financial coach inside of our signature program, Empower. She has been for 5 years. You're sort of intertwined with so many different coaches in the industry whom I adore and love. So I'm just like really excited to have you here. Yay.
Yeah, it's been incredible. It's like, you know, the collision of two worlds here.
Yeah. 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 So I don't generally love to go back with like, oh, tell us your story, because I think it's kind of boring, but you've been doing what, 18 years working as a CPA?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came out of college with my accounting degree in hand and my offer from a Big Four accounting firm. And that's where I started, right? So the traditional accounting route, and spent 18 years in public accounting as a CPA doing financial statement audit, which I know to most sounds like a foreign. Yes, I know, fancy, right? But basically analyzing financial statements and business processes, right, of clients that we have within the firm. And yeah, that's where like my whole career has been spent.
Yeah. It's funny that you said traditional accounting route, because if you come over to YouTube, you'll see that Lauren is covered in tattoos, like a full sleeve of tattoos on one arm and like what, half a sleeve on the other. And you take a really unconventional, non-traditional route to the way that you teach, the way that you speak, the way that you share. And that's one of my, many favorite things about you. So talk to me a little bit about this like untraditional approach that you take, because you are far from the boring kind of, with all due respect, the glasses with the suit and tie and all of that. I mean, that's just not who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I pride myself in being the unconventional and the conventional, typically the most boring occupation that you can think of, right? Yeah, and it's interesting, right? I mean, anybody outside of the work and professional life, and if I said, can you guess what I do? The answer would never be you're a CPA, right?
Yeah.
So it's always fun to kind of see the shock of people and the duality, right? And I think for me, being in public accounting with the traditional career path, it was a bit of living two lives, right? At work, I was all buttoned up, everything's covered up, I'm in the client site and, I'm on best behavior. And then it's, you see me on the weekend and it's a different story, right? She's on her husband's Harley, she's covered in tattoos, and you wouldn't think that she's crunching numbers all day. But I do think that in terms of being unconventional, specifically in my professional life, really comes down to communication, right? The way that I coach, the way that I explain things in a very simple, straightforward, no BS way, I think really gives me an advantage. It's not the fluff. Let's get straight to it. Let's make sure that we're all aligned in terms of expectations, and that I communicate that in a way that may feel a little uncomfortable for people that typically sit in my chair.
Yeah, but I got to be honest. I mean, and I know we're obviously very good friends, so I see you through a different lens, but having someone who does kind of just get straight to it when you're talking about something like numbers and taxes and investments, I'd rather you just tell me about it than give me the fluff, because I feel like the fluff is oftentimes the stuff that I don't understand. It's like, don't give me the fluffy jargon. Just tell me, what does this mean? Would this make sense to a golden doodle? You know what I mean? Like, just give it to me straight. So I love that approach that you take, because not only are you your traditional CPA, but you're now also a fractional CFO.
Yep.
Can you explain what that means? Because so much of our audience, so many people in our audience are coaches. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs, and sort of as we scale, we start to sometimes look for people like yourself who are fractional CFOs. But I know there's also confusion, and I know you're going to say it eloquently, like the difference between like, is a CPA the same thing as an accountant or a financial advisor? Like, can you just give us the rough, boring breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think of accountants, I really think of three buckets. The first to me is basic kind of bookkeeping. Right, that's the people that are in the day-to-day of keeping your financial records up to date. They are going through account reconciliations, making sure like everything's categorized the right way, right? When they look at your bank statements and they're looking at kind of your books and records. That's kind of bucket one. Bucket two to me is your tax professional, right? And I say that there's a few facets within tax, right? You've got a basic preparer, and just so everyone knows, you don't actually have to be an accountant to prepare taxes, right?
Ooh.
Like block. Like they're not all CPAs, they're not all accountants. So tax preparer, one. Then you also have people who help with compliance and strategy, right? From a tax point of view as well. So that's kind of the tax bucket. Then you've got the CFO bucket, right? In the space that we're talking, right? A fractional CFO really brings an executive level financial presence to your business, right? If you think about roles that you have in your company, you've got a COO, you've got a CEO, this is a CFO, right? This is high level. It's providing financial analysis, advice, helping you with goal setting, and really taking your numbers and helping that translate into, I would say, two paths: fixing your problems, identification of issues, right? And goal setting, right? So there's things that you want to accomplish in your business. I would say it is so key for you to have this person involved in your business, right? And like fractional says, right, we're on a part-time basis. We're on a contract basis. So we're coming in with, a ton of expertise because we, from a background perspective and serving various clients in this space, we can bring such a good point of view in terms of helping you accomplish that stuff.
Yeah. What would you say? We're just going in. We're here. We're here. Join us. Meet us here. What would you say to someone who's listening and they're like, okay, but I'm really nervous. I'm scared. I'm embarrassed. I don't want a fractional CFO or someone to see my numbers. Like, it's really bad. I don't want you to see it.
Yeah. In finance, it's funny because take a step back, right? The reason you're an entrepreneur at the core is to make money, right? Yeah. Whether you started a business, you acquired it, however you became that CEO role, like you want to make money. You cannot ignore the numbers. And I will say it does feel intimate, right? Like, yeah, you're going to give you access to my bank information and you're going to see where I spend money. There's no judgment. At the end of the day, I will say we've always seen worse, right? Like the scenarios, and there is no opportunity for you to grow, for you to adjust, for you to get perspectives if you're going to hide it, right? If you're going to avoid it and you're not going to look at your numbers. It's one of those things that even as an entrepreneur myself, right? It's making sure I even have the right, I have a bookkeeper, right? Like I'm having people help me even in the finances of my business. And again, it's being open in terms of here's what it is. And the only way that you can create, any change in terms of trying to better what that profit number looks like is really to engage the right people.
Yeah. And our people know this too, because we talk all the time about how we can't manage what we don't measure. Right. And that's the importance with metrics. And whether we're talking about weight loss, which by the way, so many personal trainers have personal trainers, because at the end of the day, I'm sure for you with a bookkeeper, it's like, your head is spinning. Maybe you just don't even want to like deal with it. You want other eyeballs on it. Cause when you're inside the bottle, it's really hard to read the label. Right. And so it's like just having some fresh eyes to come in. And for me, when I was a trainer, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is write my own programming. I just wrote 20 other programs. I don't want to write mine. So I love this sort of permission to just, let's look at it without judgment. And then let's see where we can go. Now, I know you work a lot with goal setting and there's like a proactive approach, but then there's also the reactive approach to the things that are going on when you have challenges with money. Where's your personal favorite to focus?
It's connecting both.
Ooh.
Right. So for me, I can look at your financial statements all day. When I say that, that's historical information. That is, hey, as of month end, here's where we are. I can see your financials year to date. I can analyze the information. How does that fit into your projection? How does that fit into your budgets on a go forward, right? Like, here's the information, here's what I see, and here's what I notice. Okay, now how does that impact how we think about the next steps, right? So for me, it's really connecting the two, and where you have the limits with someone like a bookkeeper or even tax folks, besides maybe strategy, is really focusing on the historical, and it's not that path forward. I will say the path forward is the exciting stuff, but I think we need to know where we were in order to really figure out what those next steps are in a very meaningful and knowledgeable way.
Yeah. Are you working, when you work with a company or a business, are you working with their personal finances as well as their business finances? And are the two interchangeable and related at all?
Yeah, so I would say no.
Okay.
Typically, it is just the business side, right? But with that being said, right, we talk about owner salaries, we talk about owner distributions, right? In terms of like, well, hey, what do we need to pull out of the business in order for you to survive and thrive as a family, right? Like, and it's also, I will say, the goal setting is commingled, right? When you have a couple that owns a restaurant, right, and they have two small kids at home, and the intent and goal is for the wife to spend more time with the children while they're young, or for him to maybe spend less time because he wants to spend time on marketing, right? Like, those things, it can be business, it can be personal, but the decision is still in the business, right? So where do we spend time? How do we free that up? Who do we hire? When do we hire them, right? So I think it's really understanding how your personal goals commingle with your business goals for us to be able to figure out, again, the path forward.
Mm. I feel like a lot of times people get into a particular industry or niche or job because either maybe their parents did or they had some sort of a traumatic experience themselves. For example, I was bankrupt and living on someone's couch and I never wanted to be there again. So I wanted to get control of my finances and I became a CPA, right? Like, it doesn't have to be some dramatic story, but is there a reason that you got into accounting? Did you have some sort of a personal story of, triumph or whatever it was that got you here? Or was it just like, yeah, that's a good major, we'll just do that one?
Yeah, so it's so funny you brought up Shannon before, because our backstories are so similar in how we ended up as accountants and where we did. So I actually started college thinking I wanted to be a high school Spanish teacher. So I was like, oh,
Dios
great.
mío.
See. No. So very quickly into college, I was like, this is not the path I want to go. As much as I enjoy teaching, like, I just think at that age level, I was like, I wasn't interested.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very interesting to see now, right, the coaching component of teaching people about accounting and these concepts has translated from that point in time till now. So I'll just say, in hindsight, it is pretty funny. But yeah, I had someone say to me, okay, well, what other subjects did you like in high school, right? And I said, well, I like math. Why don't you try accounting, right? That common misconception that, like, it's basic math. It's not really that much math. But I will say I appreciate the stereotype, because it did get me into accounting 101. I loved my instructor and I was like, all right, I get this, right?
Yeah.
I think with business majors, right, we're required to like do some basic accounting classes. Some people are just like so perplexed by debits and credits and charts of accounts that I was just like, oh no, I understand this. So let's keep going, right? So it was just kind of one of those things where it was, let's try it, see what happens. And then here we are.
And here we are 2 decades later, working with like huge Fortune 100 companies and just like building this incredible brand around this sort of unconventional approach. When it comes to the actual sort of strategy and fractional services and stuff, are you taking a risky, unconventional approach to the work that you're doing, or is it more just like the brand?
Yeah, I would say it's more the brand, right? And I think it's more about me versus like, I want you to take some crazy approach with like your tax return, right? Like, I'm not one that's, hey, let's live on the edge of, financially corrupting your business. I would say, but I'm going to push, I'm going to create accountability. I'm going to communicate in a way that I think people may not be used to, again, from an accountant. But it's not necessarily as it relates to the actual approach.
Yeah. There are definitely mistakes that people make. And we, actually Shannon and I probably talked about it on the podcast, some just really bad tax advice out there, or people assuming because they see it on TikTok or Instagram that like, I can write off my G-Wagon and I can write off all these things. And it's like, oh, that might not be true. You should really look into it. And different states have different laws and, different expectations and stuff. What are some tips on avoiding sort of bad cash flow decisions or tax decisions?
Yeah. So, I want to give you a quick stat just so it gives some context as the importance of cash flows in your business. And I'll explain what cash flows kinds of means in a second. Right. So the statistics say that 70% of small businesses fail within the first 10 years.
Wow.
83% of that is due to bad cash flow decisions.
Wow.
So it is the number one reason that people are failing within the first 10 years as entrepreneurs.
Wow.
So
And do you think that's because of a lack of education?
I think it's a few things. So let's talk about kind of what the cash flow is, and then we can talk about a couple of the different components as to why it makes sense that it's bad cash flow decisions. So I think it's awareness for sure, but I think let's talk about what the cash flow is. The cash flow is a projection, right, for a period of time, and whether that's 6 months or a year, as to your inflows and your outflows of cash in your business. Okay. It's as basic as that. Cash in, income, it's revenue, it's interest income in your bank account, it's, whatever products that you're, again, collecting cash on. Cash outflows, it's your expenses, right? It's rent you're paying, it's utilities, it's salaries. So it is very basic kind of financial information. And you're taking your cash balance and you're figuring out, okay, based on the activity for the defined period, what is my cash balance at the end of the period based on the inflows and the outflows? I would say it is lack of budget and planning, right? So it's first step is let's figure out what that looks like. And you have to be precise. Put all the information be conservative, build in emergency fund, right? Like that's the other thing I see happening. Like if you lose one customer, right? Like what does that mean? Like you need to have contingency plans somewhat built into this stuff, right? So be robust, put your goals in that cash flow, right? So, okay, Jess wants to hire a new person by August, and here's how much we're planning to spend on that person, right? So putting that stuff again in the numbers and measuring it. I've seen so many times where like we build this cash flow, but then we're not really looking at it. It's like I can update it. My cash seems fine, so I'm comfortable. How did I do what I budgeted versus what I actually did? And that's why I mentioned earlier connecting the dots between the two.
Yeah.
You cannot learn your lesson. You cannot change your actions if you have not connected those two dots.
Yeah.
Past performance. Hey, this month I said I was going to make, $100,000 and I only made 75. What happened, right? Did I, bring in less revenue? Did I incur an expense I wasn't anticipating? And maybe it's something that's going to be happening in the future. So again, just being mindful of monitoring that kind of budget to actual and updating the cash flow.
Yeah.
I do think also, if you do not clearly have accurate books and records to be able to do that in a robust way, you are going to have a problem. Right? If that crap in, crap out, end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So it's making sure that whether you do it in-house, it's okay if you don't have an accountant doing it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you know enough about how to do your books. There are a lot of good tools out there, especially if you're just starting out. That's okay, right? It doesn't mean you can't analyze your financial information, but I would just encourage accurate and timely financial information. I think the other thing is being able to evaluate risk, right? When you're looking at that cash flow. And when I say risk, I'll just say timing plays into it quite a bit. So if I am slow to receive my AR from a customer, but I have to pay payroll, right?
What's AR?
Like accounts receivable, right? So if I have something that is owed to me that I invoiced and it wasn't paid right away, right? Let's say my terms are due in 30 days. And I don't have active collections, I'm not chasing that money down, I'm not going to be able to fund my operations, right? So I think it's just figuring out where to spend time to make sure you're still in this kind of safe zone.
Yeah. I want to go back. I have a follow-up question to something that you said, but also I just want to point out, I love analogies and metaphors. And you said something before about sort of like setting it up, but then not really looking at it. And I have all of these flashback memories and visuals because I am like the queen of doing this, where I'll get really excited and I'll go to Target and I'll buy like a cute notebook, or I'll buy a new calendar and I'll map everything out. And then I never I like don't go back to it. It's like, cool, I got it ready to go, and then I didn't do anything with it. So to me, when you get it ready and you don't actually circle back again, or you're not checking in on it, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, it's kind of like you're planting a tomato plant and then you're just like never watering it, and you're never checking on it, and you're never, going out to find the fruit. You planted it. And it's like, well, that's not really going to do you any good. It's probably not going to thrive like you want it to. When you brought up, I call it runway, you called it emergency fund. What is, if there is a particular number of time, like months or years of runway that would be responsible, or sort of what would you tell your clients if you can give that information? What's like a good amount of runway or emergency fund to have?
Yeah, I personally would say at least 6 months.
Okay.
And it really depends on the industry. But after coming out of a situation like COVID, right, like seeing the hit on certain businesses and like the decisions that had to be made, I think obviously that was a longer period of time, but I would say at a minimum 6 months would be kind of the comfort level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild how many businesses just barely, I knew so many people who didn't even have a month of runway when COVID hit. And it was so sad to see what happened, but it's also a beautiful lesson, like a tough one to have, but a really beautiful lesson. And just a reminder of, you just never know what's going to happen. And we sort of dove right into the money stuff, and I know we can keep going there, but I do want to talk about, what'd you say?
I said accounting, it's the sexy stuff, is the numbers.
It's the sexy stuff. You know what? I was trying so hard to avoid not talking about all of our trips to like Vegas and stuff, that I was like, let's just go right into the money. Nobody needs to hear about our club nights in Vegas.
We'll never talk about numbers.
But I do actually want to shift gears into something that is not an easy conversation to have, which for you, it maybe wasn't COVID. You unexpectedly lost your husband, and it was awful in June of 2021. And I would imagine that brought up a lot. You have 2 kids. You're now a single mother, widowed. And you have a great job and you know things about money, but can you talk through just like, first of all, in the financial world, how did it sort of shake you? Where did you have enough runway? Were you coming up against things that you weren't expecting?
Yeah. So I'll say from a financial perspective, I was the money person, right? As the CPA, as the accountant, I always was the owner of the budget. So for me, it didn't feel as detrimental to jump into that. I can imagine for other widows, 1, who haven't historically worked, 2, whose husbands take care of all the money and you have no insight. I knew kind of what the balances were in every bank account. I knew exactly what retirement accounts we were dealing with. I knew all of the payments for the month. And it was because I had to do that evaluation. It was, if I look at the money, do I need to move? Right? Like, do I need to sell my house? Can I afford my mortgage and my taxes still? I live in New Jersey. It is not cheap.
Yeah.
Right. So now we have moved from a dual income to one. And what does that mean for my money? And I will say, thankfully, enough of a runway that I actually had an opportunity to take a little bit of a step back with my career. And I say that in the context of I went from working full time to working like an 85% schedule. And that gave me the ability to be done at 3:00 every day, pick my children up from school, take them to activities. I'm at every Taekwondo class. I'm at baseball practice. I'm at dance recitals. I don't miss a thing. Right. So it's funny because I wasn't scrambling to make more money. I actually was fine making less because I was spending less time, sitting in front of my computer and more time laughing with my kids and enjoying every minute and just soaking them up. Right. Obviously, in the wake of grief, right, there's concerns about how it's going to impact the kids too, right? And I was so concerned about, oh my God, like I need to be there even more now for these children than I have for the last, I'm trying to think how old my son was. He was 5 at the time, right? So over the last 5 years of being a mother, I need to be even more present than I have been. And you know what? I want to be.
Yeah.
It's not an obligation. It is. I genuinely love spending time with those kids. And like, I don't want to look back when they're little and say, oh my God, I was working so crazy just to try to make ends meet. No, I took a step back. And if anything, it really helped me prioritize how I use my time.
Well, it's interesting, this idea of prioritizing how you use your time. And I can totally understand and empathize with obviously seeing what's important and wanting to spend more time with them and being okay with that pay cut because you're in a situation or that time cut where you could do that.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide, and now it's the time to go start my own business because I'm not busy enough as a single mother?
Get rid of that whole thing, that till 3:00 situation. Yeah. So for me,
because I mean, right now it's 9:15 at night and we're podcasting.
Fine.
Okay. Just want everyone to get the picture. Like kids went to bed and now you're sitting down to do the side hustle.
So from like 3 to 8:30 is like full-time mothering, right? Making dinner, baths, reading, all that, practice, all that stuff goes on. Then they go to bed and it's like, okay, now what, right? For a couple hours at least at night, then I can get some stuff done and then I crash hard. Yeah. I forgot what your original question was.
Why did you decide now would be a really good time to start a whole new business as an entrepreneur? No. Why not? Yeah.
So I appreciate very much the flexibility that I was given in, I'll say, kind of trauma, initial grief, in terms of my career. But the support feels very surface level when you're working for an organization as giant as the one I was with. And I think for me, even that reduced time felt so empty. It felt so empty. I am a small blip in this huge cog that's operating, and I understand the purpose of why we are out there. It is a requirement in the capital markets, but I really was just craving something different about what I was spending my time on during work. And I was just like, I don't even know where to go. Like,
was this whisper or craving coming in before the loss, or was this something that was sort of bubbled to the surface?
Yeah, I think probably not. And just for context, so my husband worked for a union. He was an electrician for 20 years. And I was the consistent income. So it was about stability when, like, he goes through periods of time where he's working 7, 12-hour shifts and all this crazy overtime, making a ton of money. And then he gets laid off and he's not working for a while. My job is consistent. We know what to expect. There's no ruffled feathers, right? It felt like just this area of safety for us, in terms of like, this is the known, this is the unknown, let's make it work. Right. And then when you completely throw that out the door, right? Like, well, now that's completely gone. Right. And I think the evaluation of really my life came into play so much. When you lose your spouse, it is hard enough, the primary loss, but there are so many secondary losses just that come. The loss of like what you thought your life was going to be like, the loss of, building your life with someone else, the loss of, again, these plans that we had and the way we had things modeled and what we envisioned was gone, right? So it was, well, what do I want that to look like? Like, what kind of parent do I want to be? What kind of things do I want to spend my time doing? Even something simple as, like, I think I told you, like, I started taking piano lessons. Like, like, it's just something where it's like, you know what, I really would love to pick up a new skill. And like, I love it so much.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right? And so I couldn't help but look at where I spend most of my time with my job, right? And really, usually people leave public accounting and they go work for the companies we serve, right? And work in, like, again, a big company. There are people that take other paths, but I was just, the thought of that, I was like, I just can't do it. I can't do it. So knowing that your husband left his 9 to 5, right, to support you and be part of your business, I was like, let me text Mike and just see, like, let him know what I'm thinking and just see, like, what his reaction is, right? I'm just like, I got to get out of here. I don't know where to go first. Like, what were you thinking about? Did you take classes? I think I asked him too. I was just like, I couldn't envision how my career to date was going to translate into this new thing. Mm-hmm. And he literally, all he said was, can I connect you with someone? Literally not anything else. I said, sure. And an email went out, connected me with Shannon, and like her and I became such fast friends. Her and I think so similarly. We have such like very similar backgrounds, and she has been like such an amazing mentor for me to show me the ropes on what her fractional CFO.
You're crying. It's fine.
Right. And like opening my eyes to the fact that my job where I make money doesn't have to be empty. It doesn't have to be putting up with conditions or things I really dislike just to get a paycheck and survive. Yeah. Right. It doesn't have to be a sacrifice of happiness in order for me to have a well-paying job, right? Yeah. Like I can build something of my own that is tangible, that can really make a difference in people's lives. And that feels so freaking good. I can't even tell you.
I have to just publicly edify you, because similarly to how you had reached out to Mike and, you know, you asked for help is what you did. You put your ego aside, you asked for help. You said, I'm not sure what to do or where to start. I think I want to do this thing. I need help. You've taken that exact same framework, that same method, that same approach to your grief journey. And I know immediately signed yourself up, whether it was for grief counseling or the kids for grief counseling, or to go to therapy or to be in support groups. And you still go to support groups weekly. And I'm just so proud of you for doing that, because it's the ability to ask for what you need that most people are scared to do, because we feel, if I ask for what I need, if I ask for help, then I might look stupid. I might look less than, I might look like I don't have things under control. And of course, we're talking about money today too. So it's like through the context of that as well, with when we're talking about money, just your ability to put that ego aside and ask for help has been so beautiful to watch. And obviously something that it's such an admirable trait. And it's something that I just adore that you have. But I'd love to talk about it for a second. Was not just reaching out to Mike, because like we're old friends, but has asking for help or admitting you don't know something ever been a challenge for you?
Yeah.
Because you got like a tough exterior. You look like a badass chick, which you are. You know what I mean? Like you don't look like someone who would ask for help.
Yeah. And I think before the shock of losing my husband the way that I did, I would say yes. It was feeling like I needed to have everything handled, right? My job, the kids, the house, like just life and work in general. And as you know, right, I don't have immediate family that lives close by, right? So for me, there isn't a lot of support locally for me that it's, hey, I'm going to drop the kids off and do this or that. Like I very consciously have to ask for help because I usually have to pay for it, right? Which is fine. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to come out of pocket, and maybe that actually makes it feel easier to ask for help. But I would say the lesson that I learned through this whole thing is unexpected things happen, right? And it's okay to be human. It's okay to be griefy and joyful. It's okay to show vulnerability and not be perfect, and asking for help, honestly, and being like very open about where you may need help is the only way that you're going to grow. Like you said, give me all the information, give me all the podcasts, give me all the books, give me all the help. Like I will take it all, right? I am more than happy to get support where I need it. And it's a continual journey. It's not like, okay, check that off the list, we're good. It's really having to check in frequently to say, okay, like things are looking a little different now. Now I might need help with something else, whether it's business related or personal or with the kids even, right? Yeah. That I think it's just I'm painfully self-aware, I think. So I think for me, it's pretty easy to identify kind of where are some of the pain points.
Yeah. What are some other things in your life that have changed? Obviously your life was flipped upside down, but through this grief journey that you're still on, and my understanding is that you'll always be on. Yep. I would imagine from an outside perspective, it looks like maybe tightening boundaries a little bit. Maybe there's some friendships or relationships that you've just stopped putting as much effort into, or things that are no longer serving you. Have there been things along the way that you're just like, yeah, I mean, change needs to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, I think, is recognizing the resilience. So, and I think for me, it's really being like, I have been through the worst experience that I can imagine to date. And if I survived those days, like there's nothing I can't handle. And that's why I think even my perspective about some of the issues that come up from clients is like, all right, we got this. Like,
Yeah.
let's not freak out. Let's not feel like my finances are such an intimate thing, right? Like, we can handle it. Like, it's something that, like, let's look at the information, let's figure out the best path forward, let's stay calm, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's being able to recognize that. You mentioned boundary setting. It's been huge for me.
Yeah.
That was something I was thrust into, where I had no choice. When you have two young children at the age of 2 and 5 that have no other parent, no one else to care for them in the way that they need, no one else to show up for them, emotionally support them as they lost half of their world, you step up to the plate. And I choose to do that every single day. And for me, I know an email can wait. I know a meeting can wait. If it's urgent, let's talk about why, right? But like, for me, when my 3 o'clock was hitting, and I've translated that into my business now, right? I am just, don't expect to hear from me. If I need to log in later, we need to discuss, that's fine. But I am very clear on communicating what those boundaries are. That is the key for me.
Yeah.
It is saying, by the way, I only work till this time. I'm happy to discuss it at an alternative time. It's not just leaving it hanging, because honestly, there have been no situations where I have communicated my boundaries on what my schedule looks like and my commitment to my children, where people have said, "Ugh, I really wish you could," or "Can you make an exception?" I literally haven't had that at all.
Yeah. What about boundaries around your own self-care, as we'll call it, right? Going to therapy, going to counseling, going to group support, whatever that would be. I am sure there are days that you don't feel like it.
Yep.
But you still
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a couple things. I know people go on and on about morning routines, but it is so crucial for me.
Yeah.
I wake up early before the kids get up. I need to start my day with quiet. I pray, I work out. So for me, just setting the tone for the day. And then being graceful with myself if I am plugging through some of the busyness and realizing I might need to take a break, right? I've had that happen before, where things have been so crazy at work and there's a trigger that happens. I'm like, you know what? I have a block of time on my calendar. I'm just going to block it off. I might go take a nap. Or I might call my therapist and say, like, can we do a quick virtual session? Like, I just need to talk, right? So I think it's just making sure not to get too distracted by the busyness, because things are hectic, and just making time for it. I would say the therapy stuff, for sure, it's a non-negotiable. It is, and I'll say with the boundaries, calendar is huge.
Yeah.
It's not my calendar. I don't know if it's going to happen. Right. So it literally every week that block is there. Lauren, can you move that? No, I can't move that. Period. Right. So I think it's just, I calendar literally everything: church, therapy, kids sports, time unavailable. So like, it's not an option.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure we put our last like just catch up call as friends on our calendars.
Absolutely.
Which is funny because people think it's so robotic and unsexy and like, oh, you have to schedule a call with your friend. And look, sometimes we just call each other and that's fine. But it's also being really intentional with like, it would be really nice to get a nice long catch up in, and we want to make sure that we're both available and we're not distracted, and let's just put it on the calendar because we know it's going to happen. And so, I mean, I live and breathe by my calendar.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because how often is it you try to call me and I'm like, hey, I'm giving the kids a bath, I'll call you back, and then I don't for 3 days, and then you're busy doing something. It just
yeah, especially with for us the time difference. I mean, you're always giving the kids a bath. They're very clean kids. I'm very happy about it. I feel like it's just the day, because my work day ends and I call and you're in bath time. Yeah. 8:30. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh. And then a lot of times if you call, I'm like in the middle of a work call, so I love it. Obviously, the grief stuff and the trauma that you have been through is over here, right? And I'm, hey, YouTubers, I've got my hand over here. But so much of what you've learned in that process and what you've taken into your life and your mindset now does translate over into business and entrepreneurship. And so much of entrepreneurship is mindset. And we say it all the time, personal development, right? It's like a rocket ship to personal development. And something that I just have witnessed over the last decade is your mindset and how it has evolved. And I'd like to think mine has as well. And I know we can have really elevated and expansive conversations about mindset type of stuff, and just whether it's taking control or, be do have or meditation, whatever it would be. It's like really fun to have those conversations, as opposed to, not that either of us ever were living in victim or blame, but certainly in my early 20s, surrounded by a lot of people who complained every day at lunch around the lunch table in the teacher's lounge, I did a lot of complaining, and I would jump on board with the gossiping because it made me feel part of the room, right? Or, you're gossiping about TV shows, like not people, but like other people that are not in our lives. And it's been really cool to see, I think, just also growing up, right? We've matured and evolved a lot. And I know that you are just a no bullshit person when it comes to sort of the toxic energy. Yep. So going back to, like, we talked about the boundaries and everything, what sort of has changed, or what are you bringing with you into your business that you've learned through your growth with mindset, your, what would the word be? Involvement in the church and
Yep.
your grief?
Yeah. So I think, as you talked about people, right? I think it's my appetite to entertain that type of stuff. It has always been fairly low.
Yeah.
It's even lower now. So for me, whether it's personal relationships or prospective clients, right? Like if our values and mindsets don't align, I'm going to shy away from doing business with those types of folks.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for building team, right? I think that it is very hard to connect with folks and get them on board with your vision and your mission if there is like a clear disconnect on the mindset stuff. And I think, unfortunately, from a personal perspective, like I have lost friendships, or at least adjusted my expectations, maybe is the right way to say it, of what I get out of those friendships. That is okay if it is surface level. I will not participate in the talk about, the moms that pick up. I don't have space for it. And I'm too worried about what I'm doing to worry about what they're doing. And you know what, if that makes them happy, good for them. It's not me to judge, right? And I think in terms of adjusting those expectations, it gives you more space, right, to interact with folks that you can have a more in-depth conversation with, that you connect with in a different way, that can help you grow. And that's why I think with you and I, right, we have so quickly reconnected, right, in terms of where we are and the type of people that we've turned into, in our late 30s. I would say early 40s for me. Right? That, like, I think you have so much less in common, and that's okay, right? I think you don't have to expect everyone to operate at the same level that you are. And you don't need everything from everybody, right? Yeah. So it's just surrounding yourself with the right people who are going to be on board with your mission.
Adjusted expectations. I love it. Because it's not this like violent cutting out, right? People are always, I have to cut people out of my life. It's like, no, you could just adjust the expectations. I love it. I love it. I don't know. I obviously could talk to you all day. I'm like, what are we doing? Are we doing a podcast right now? Let's have you pimp yourself out for a moment there. So if people want to follow you, find out about how they can work with you, hire you, if you've got any sort of freebies, can you just drop us all the goodies?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So the name of my company is Unconventional CFO Services. You guys can find me on Instagram. It's Lauren Furtado CFO is my handle. That's probably the easiest way to get to the website, which is unconventionalcfo.com. And there you're going to see my gamut of services that I provide. And I will say they range everything from needing fractional CFO services to the lower end where I'm just coming in to do a diagnostic of your financials, right? There is a range of services. And then from a freebie perspective, would love you guys to check out at a minimum the cash flow webinar that I'm doing called Cash Flow Unleashed that you can find on my website.
I love it. We'll put the link for the show notes, or link for that in the show notes, as well as your Instagram. We'll save that there. You ready for some rapid fire before we go?
I am.
Okay, let's go unconventional because it's super on brand. Now, be nice here. Okay. Favorite memory of us together? Keep it PG-13.
Okay. I mean, my mind instantly went to Las Vegas.
Okay.
And just dancing anywhere and everywhere, right?
Like whether
it's in Vegas, down the Jersey Shore, whether it's in northern New Jersey or in the city on New Year's Eve, seeing Armin van Buuren, right? Just dancing, period.
lot of fist pumping in our relationship. A lot of fist pumping. I love it. What are you currently reading or listening to that you're loving?
Oh gosh. So from a reading perspective, I am reading Start With Why.
Oh, good one.
Listening perspective, I am so all over the place. But I am really loving Layla Hermosi.
Oh, she's so good.
Love her.
She's so good.
Yeah. So I would say I've been binging her stuff quite a bit. That's probably like top of my podcast list right now.
Yeah. Favorite thing to do with your kids?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? We're at the beach right now. Actually, we're at the shore. So I would say that's number one, is just spending time on the beach together. And really, whether it's, we're in the backyard on the swing set, it is being away from everything electronic, being present, and really just enjoying them.
I love it. What's one thing people get wrong about you?
Oh God. Besides what I actually do as a career, right?
What do you think you do?
That's a good question. Wait, do you do hair? It's just such a typical answer for New Jersey, right? I have dark, long hair and tattoos. I feel like it's just the standard answer. I'm actually, I have a professional certification, everybody. It's fine. I'm trying to think what else. I would say probably the tough exterior, right, that you do see with the tattoos and kind of the initial versus I think I do have a pretty kind heart. I do have such a big soft side. I am okay being emotional and talking about that stuff and, showing my softer side for sure.
Yeah. Do you know how many tattoos you even have?
Oh my God, good question.
They bleed.
I have a full sleeve, and then besides that, I have 13 others.
Which was your first, which is your favorite, and which was your last?
I
want a tour.
PG-13, you said, right? Yes, not on YouTube. So first was subsequently covered up, a piece on my back. Come on, early 2000s tramp stamp. Standard. So yeah, has since then been covered with a nice piece. My most recent is a tarot card here on my wrist, the Lover's tarot card. And actually, it's not traditionally done, but I did it with skulls versus the actual people.
Of course you did.
Of course.
Very on brand.
I would say my favorite is my right forearm. It is a skull with 2 red roses for my children. It's part of my sleeve, but I would say this one for me kind of hits home the most. It's really the only place I have color.
I love it. All right, we're coming to the final 2. So we have our $50,000 question. If I were to cut you a check for 50 grand and I gave it to you tomorrow, you had to use it in or on your business. You could split it up, or you can do one lump sum. How would you invest it?
Marketing.
Easy. Easy. I love it. Final question. We named the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe that we're always evolving and growing as we are, right? And we've seen that. And our businesses are a reflection of our growth for sure. So we don't pivot, we evolve. What is your next personal or business evolution?
Yeah, for me, it is continuing to serve clients, but I would say niching down to become specialty in like a specific area for me. I, with my experience, have seen so much in terms of industries that I really can go and analyze anything, but I would love to really be able to hone in on a specific industry and be able to really be the go-to within that.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited to be here to witness it, to support you, to cheer you on, and to connect you to every single one of my entrepreneurial CEO friends who needs your services. All right, my friends, if you love this episode, which I know you did, if you got something from it, if you want to reach out to Lauren, I am sure she would be open and willing to talk to you if this story, her personal story, resonated at all. Connect with her over at connect on Instagram at Lauren_Furtado_CFO. Tag her, tag me. I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what your takeaways were. And of course, make sure you go download the sweet freebie Cash Flow Unleashed so that you can get a better hold and grasp of your dollars. As always, friends, cheers to evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.